My father's fist met my cheek before the jazz band even hit their second chord. I didn't scream, not when he yanked my hair and dragged me through a ballroom filled with applause. My sister raised her glass and whispered to consequences, and no one, not one person, moved to stop them. But what they didn't know was that I had already pressed send, and by the next sunrise, everything they'd built, the careers, the lies, the legacy, would begin to burn. I walked out bloody, but I wasn't the one who should be afraid. Watch till the end. You'll see why silence was the deadliest thing I ever weaponized. The invitation had been embossed real gold foil, thick cardstock, the kind that smelled expensive when you opened it, in celebration of Emily Whitmore's well-deserved promotion to regional VP. There was no mention of family, no line that said her sister Arabella will be there too. But I showed up anyway. I wore a black shift dress I'd worn to 3 different functions already. The hem had a thread loose, but I clipped it with nail scissors before I left the apartment. My heels were scuffed, my lipstick a little too dry, but I looked in the mirror and told myself I belonged. Because I did. Even if they never said it. Even if they'd spent my entire life convincing me otherwise. The venue was a kind of shrine to perfection. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen tears. The floor gleamed like it had been polished with pride and money. A pianist played jazz in the corner, elegant background noise to drown out truths. And there I was, near the coat check, clutching a gift box wrapped in navy ribbon like it could protect me. Emily glowed in crimson silk. She moved through the room like she owned the air itself. Our parents orbited her like she was the sun. Photos were taken, flutes were clinked, and in every shot I was nowhere. I caught a glimpse of the family slideshow playing on a screen near the back. Baby Emily, graduation Emily, VP Emily, no Arabella, not even one. When she finally saw me, she tilted her head like she'd spotted something sticky on her shoe. "Oh wow," she said, eyes skimming me up and down. "Didn't think you'd actually show." "I'm family," I said flatly. "Are you?" She laughed into her glass. "Well, tonight's about winners. But hey, good for you." She walked away before I could reply. My face burned, not just from her words, but from the way everyone around her smirked like they were in on the joke. My father was at the bar laughing with a man in a Navy uniform. My mother was deep in conversation with a board member from Emily's firm. No one looked my way, and still I stayed. Because I thought, maybe tonight will be different. Maybe someone will ask me how I've been. Maybe someone will say, "We're proud of you too." But the truth was quieter than hope. The truth came in waves, in sideways glances, in the space they left around me, in the way my presence was always a disruption, never a welcome. Then came the toast. Emily raised her glass. To those who earned their titles the hard way, and to those who just show up. Laughter, soft and cruel, like applause for a private execution. I turned to leave. Whatever dignity I had left wasn't worth another minute under their spotlight. But I didn't get far. Leaving already, my father called. Too loud. His voice cut through the music like a blade. I froze. He stepped toward me. Drink in, hand the smirk spreading on his weathered face. "Did someone finally offer you a job that suits your talents?" he asked. A few guests chuckled, polite, controlled. "What's that supposed to mean?" I said, voice trembling. He gestured to the servers. "They're hiring. You know, help." More laughter, louder now, sharper. "I came to show respect," I said. "But clearly that's not something this family understands." Emily stepped in then like a queen descending her throne. "Oh, don't play the victim, Arabella," she sneered. "You weren't even invited. You just showed up like always, clinging to relevance." My blood boiled. I looked at her then, at him. "You're all the same. Pretending you earned everything when you've been feeding off my silence for years." The room hushed. Even the piano stopped. "What did you just say?" my father growled. But I didn't get to finish. He moved so fast, his fist, my face. It felt like glass shattering inside my skull. I didn't fall, I flew, stumbled, crashed. Somewhere something hit the floor. A tray, maybe. A glass. Or maybe just me. Then came the pull. Fingers twisted in my hair. A sharp, burning yank. I screamed. He dragged me across the marble like I was nothing, and all I saw were faces. Familiar. Still. Watching. No one moved. As we passed the dessert table, I locked eyes with my sister. She raised her glass again. To consequences, she whispered. Then she smiled. The door slammed behind us, and I hit the floor, lip bleeding, dress torn, hair ripped from my scalp. He stood over me, silent, then walked back inside like I was a stain, forgettable. But I wasn't. Not anymore. The night air hit me harder than my father's hand. I stumbled across the marble threshold heels, clacking wildly against the stone steps as if trying to outrun what had just happened. The gift box I'd carried was gone forgotten in the chaos or crushed beneath someone's designer shoe. I didn't care. My lip was bleeding. My scalp felt like it had been peeled back. My knees were scraped and stinging, but I kept walking. The parking lot looked like a void. Just rows of black glass cars glinting under street lamps that didn't feel like they were meant for me. The laughter from inside still echoed behind the double doors, muted now but still pulsing, like a song I couldn't shut off. Emily's voice riding the rhythm, "You had it coming." I made it to my car barely. My hands trembled so violently I missed the door handle twice. When I finally slid into the seat, the silence collapsed around me. Total. Crushing. Then I saw myself in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back wasn't someone I recognized. Blood along her mouth. Mascara smudged down to her jaw, hair yanked out in clumps, a black dress slashed at the shoulder seam like it had been clawed at, and eyes, my eyes red, not from crying, but from something worse. From the burn of finally seeing everything clearly. This wasn't the first slap. Not by a long shot. No, they'd been hitting me for years, just not with fists. They hit with silence, with exclusion, with sideways smiles and missing dinner invites, with edited photos where my face used to be. When I was 12, my father forgot to mention me in his speech at Emily's school award banquet. When I turned 18, my mother said college was not a good investment for someone with uncertain promise. When I got my first internship, Emily sent a group text to the family that said Arabella found a hobby. They laughed. I laughed too, because what else could I do? But tonight they stopped pretending. Tonight they gave up the charade and reminded me exactly who I was to them. Disposable. And now I was done. I wiped my mouth with the sleeve of my dress. The fabric came back stained red. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to call a friend to comfort me. And I sure as hell wasn't going to call the cops, because how do you report emotional erasure and generational cruelty? How do you explain that the slap wasn't the wound, just the confirmation of it? No. I was going to burn this down. Quietly. Strategically. They'd built a whole legacy on top of my silence, and now I was going to pull out every nail from underneath it. That's when I remembered her. Valerie Raines. 3 years ago, I helped her get back on her feet after she exposed corruption at her old firm. She was blackballed, mocked, nearly homeless. Everyone called her unstable. I didn't. I vouched for her. Back then, she told me with this look in her eye like a storm wrapped in velvet, "If you ever need to ruin someone, Arabella, anyone call me first." I laughed. She didn't. I opened my phone, found her name in my contacts, and tapped it. 1 ring. 2. She answered on the 3rd. Her voice was sharp focused. "Ara, I need your help," I whispered. My voice shook, but it didn't crack. A pause. "Are you safe?" "No." "Who hurt you?" "My father, my sister, all of them." Another pause, but this one was different. "What do you want to do?" I looked down at my torn dress, at the red blooming across my skin like petals of violence. My scalp still burned. I want them to lose everything they built on top of me. I expected concern. Instead, I got calculation. "Good," she said. "Send me everything." And Arabella, "Yeah." "By morning, they'll wish they'd left you invisible." The line went dead. But I wasn't alone anymore. I began gathering it all. every piece, every digital scar. I opened my photo album and scrolled through the saved screenshots, my father's texts threatening to cut me off, bank records showing trust transfers I never authorized, Emily's emails her cruelty-lined in corporate speak, photos from birthdays I wasn't invited to, a family Christmas card where my image had been photoshopped out, but my shoes were still visible in the edge of the shot. I added a new photo, tonight's photo, the blood, the torn hair, the truth. Then I typed, "Here's what they call family," and hit send. Valerie replied with a Dropbox link and one sentence, "Upload everything. I'm mobilizing. Mobilizing. Not reacting. Not comforting. Mobilizing. Like a general preparing a war plan. By the time I got home, she'd already messaged again. I want names, companies, who promoted your sister, what charities your parents are tied to, every board member at that party. I gave her everything. Emily's boss, the company name, their donors, the private country club, the nonprofits, the shell company I suspected my father funneled money through. Then I took a long, shaking breath and turned on the shower. The blood circled the drain in pink spirals. I watched it go, not with horror, but with clarity. They'd made me into a ghost. Now I was going to haunt them. When I crawled into bed an hour later, Valerie's final message blinked on my screen. "By sunrise, we'll have the narrative. You gave them a party. Now we give them a reckoning." I stared at those words until my eyes blurred. Then I whispered something into the dark. They shouldn't have made me the ghost. They should have made me the warning. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, out of momentum. There was a current running through me, a live wire of focus that no longer trembled or asked for mercy. Something in me had shifted, something permanent. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. They tried to cast me as the unstable one, the dramatic sister who couldn't stand her sister's success. So I gave them stability in the form of documentation. Every receipt, every timeline, every whisper turned into a record. At 2:13 a.m., Valerie sent me a file called Phase 1. Inside were labeled folders, financials, HR, board influence, press leverage, internal witnesses. She'd done more in 4 hours than most lawyers do in a week. That was the thing about Valerie. She'd been publicly crucified once before. She knew how to dissect an empire. Quietly, precisely, surgically. By sunrise, she had pulled archived public records showing that Emily's promotion had followed a confidential HR complaint, one that disappeared suddenly and suspiciously after a generous donation from my father's shell company. The pattern was almost poetic. Emily was the face. My father was the bank. My mother, the decoy smile that made it all seem so decent. Valerie messaged again. "I need voices, anyone who saw them for who they are." I hesitated. Then I opened Instagram, scrolled through the guests I recognized from the party, found a waiter I'd seen beeline to the exit after I was dragged. I messaged him, just one line. "Do you still have the video?" He replied 45 minutes later. "I do. Got fired the next day. Still sick about it." I didn't ask for the whole thing, not yet. Just enough. A clip. Proof. What he sent me was short, blurry, but it showed Emily raising her glass. My father stepping forward, my face twisting just before the impact. The scream wasn't even the loudest part. It was the silence that followed. No one intervened. No one moved. It was a microcosm of my entire life. They let me bleed because it was easier than asking why. Valerie replied in under 2 minutes. "Perfect. This goes in the drop." We launched that morning. Not on some tabloid site. No rage posting or revenge porn. It appeared as a professional blog article titled like a think piece wrapped in class and credibility. The Whitmore Image. A study in corporate loyalty, public applause, and private violence. It didn't name me, but it named them. The article dissected patterns of power, how philanthropy often masks harm, How women like Emily weaponize corporate feminism while protecting abusers, how trust funds get used as hush money, and how family dynamics bleed into professional privilege. It ended with an anonymous quote, "Sometimes the ones they cut out of the photo are the ones holding the whole thing up." Within hours, it caught traction. LinkedIn reposts, corporate Slack channels sharing it quietly. A few whistleblower forums flagged it. People started commenting, "This sounds a lot like someone I used to work with." Then came the first domino, a message from a junior exec at Emily's firm. She DM'd me anonymously one sentence I saw what she did. It wasn't the first time. Valerie grinned when I forwarded it. Cracks in the glass. They'll shatter soon. Then she moved to phase 2, the financials. My father's name appeared on multiple filings as chair of a children's nonprofit. But public donations didn't match the tax forms. Grant money disappeared. Campaign contributions popped up around the same months Emily's HR complaints disappeared. Valerie mapped it all like a spider web. I didn't even have to touch it. I just had to keep saying yes. By noon, someone had tipped off the HR director at Emily's company. By 2:00 p.m., Emily's LinkedIn was set to private. By 3:00 p.m., the corporate PR email account had gone dark. And by evening, Valerie called. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't say congrats. She just said, "We're ahead of schedule." I stared out my window as the city turned gold under the setting sun. They'd wanted me invisible. They'd built entire narratives around my absence, Arabella, the fragile one, the disappointment, the one who couldn't keep up. But now my silence was louder than their speeches. Now I was the headline they didn't write but couldn't escape. I took out my old journal, the one I hadn't opened in years. In the back, I'd once written a quote my grandmother told me when I was a teenager. "You don't have to raise your voice to shatter glass. Just find the right frequency." I underlined it. Then I went to bed. Not because I was exhausted, because I wanted to be fully awake for the fallout. I woke up to 47 notifications. Most were alerts from Valerie's encrypted dashboard reshares, reposts, silent syndications, but a few were personal. Emily's name was trending in an HR whistleblower forum. Someone had shared an anonymous post titled, "When a vice president promotes a culture of cruelty." It didn't say her name directly, but the comments did. So did the screenshots. By 8:14 a.m., the story had reached a major workplace accountability page. By 9:23 a.m., an internal email from her firm leaked Miss Whitmore has been placed on leave pending an internal investigation. I was brushing my teeth when I saw it. I didn't smile, but my hands stopped shaking. Then came my mother. At 10:04 a.m., the first call. Ignored. At 10:20 a.m., a voicemail. "You need to stop this. Please. This isn't who you are, Arabella." Oh, but it was. This was who I'd always been. They just refused to see it. They only knew how to love Emily's shine, not my shadow. And now they were squinting into the glare of the truth. At 10:51 a.m., I got a text from my father. Not even a name. Just a line. "You're blowing this out of proportion." Followed by another, "Family forgives. This isn't a good look for you." I stared at those words so long my eyes blurred. Forgiveness without accountability is just manipulation dressed in pearls. Then came Emily. At 11:43 a.m., her message read, "You made your point. Come fix this before it's too late. Not sorry, not wrong, just exposed." I didn't respond. Instead, I went to my fridge, made black coffee, and sat cross-legged on the couch, ice pressed to my jaw laptop, warming my knees. Valerie and I were already working on Phase 3, compiling legal structures for a civil suit. The story wasn't just public, now it was potent. One news outlet picked it up under the headline, "Promotion and Power: What Happens Behind the Velvet Rope." A local podcast dissected it in real time. They didn't need names. The details were loud enough. One host said, "You know what I hate when abuse hides in monograms and donation plaques." I smiled into my mug. The house phone rang again. Yes, my parents still had a house phone, because nothing says we're fine like clinging to landlines and lies. Then came the real hit. At 2:07 p.m., Valerie called me, her voice lower than usual. They're trying to flip the narrative. What do you mean? They released a video to a friendly outlet, heavily edited. I opened the link she sent. My stomach twisted. It showed my father speaking calmly, my voice raised, distorted to sound erratic, my sister clutching her champagne like a survivor. No slap, no scream, just a convenient story scrubbed clean. They're making me look unhinged, I whispered. That was the goal, Valerie said flatly. Discredit the source before the truth lands too hard. I could feel it. The shift. The gaslight disguised as PR strategy. The comments stung. Why was she even there? Looks like she was the one causing the scene, another bitter sibling trying to ride success. I clicked off, bile in my throat, fire in my veins. I want to end it, I said. Then let's raise the stakes, Valerie said. Remember the trust fund, the wire transfers, the emails, all of it. Good. We go wide, we go legal. No more anonymous posts. This isn't a whisper war anymore, it's a reckoning. That night, we built the next layer. Trust fund withdrawals signed under my name after my 21st birthday campaign donations from the family LLC, lining up with Emily's promotion timeline, redacted HR complaints traced to a whistleblower, now willing to testify, and then the final nail. The full unedited video, the one recorded by the waiter, the one that showed the slap, the yank, the dragging, the smirk, the 99 guests who did nothing. I watched it again. Every second. This time, I didn't flinch, because I knew they thought this story would collapse under shame. But I wasn't ashamed anymore. I clicked upload, then I turned off my phone, drew the curtains, and let the night carry their silence for once. By morning, the unedited video had crossed 1 million views, not on gossip blogs, not on TikTok, on platforms that mattered. Legal advocacy forums, nonprofit watchdog networks, women's rights coalitions, LinkedIn posts from HR execs with titles like Chief People Officer and Director of Workplace Ethics. This wasn't a scandal anymore. This was a case study. Emily's firm went into full lockdown mode by 9:00 a.m. Their PR rep issued a vague statement about reviewing protocols. But people were done with protocol. They wanted action. They wanted accountability. They wanted names. And the court wanted documentation. At 10:47 a.m., I stood on the courthouse steps, not in a power suit, in the same black shift dress I'd worn to the party, now cleaned, pressed, unaltered. A statement. This wasn't a reinvention. This was a return. I clutched a thick manila folder. Inside, screenshots of stolen funds from my trust expense reports tied to Emily's promotion, signed affidavits from former employees, the full transcript of my father threatening to disown me if I kept talking. The time-stamped video submitted as evidence. Catherine, my attorney, met me just inside. Ready? I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I just breathed. That was enough. The courtroom was cold. Marble floors, oak paneling, echoes sharpened like knives. They were already there. My father in a slate gray suit that looked tighter around the collar than he was used to. My mother hair pulled back so tightly it looked like a mask. Emily stone-faced, her phone screen dimming and brightening every few seconds like a heartbeat. None of them looked at me, but I looked at them, because I wanted to remember this, not the shame, the symmetry. The judge opened the hearing. Catherine moved like a scalpel. No theatrics. Just truth, sharp and undeniable. This is not just an isolated case of family conflict. This is a systemic pattern of physical assault, financial abuse, and strategic silencing, orchestrated over years. The evidence is clear. The motive is clear. And now, so is the harm. Then came the playback, the full video. You could hear a pin drop when it ended. The gallery didn't gasp. They breathed in unison like watching something they hadn't realized they'd been holding in. My father's lawyer stammered something about misunderstood intentions. The judge didn't flinch. This is not interpretation, he said. This is impact. He ordered the motion to proceed, filed subpoenas for the trust fund theft, set a date for the civil suit. But the real moment came when we exited the courtroom. Microphones, cameras, the electric hum of public interest. Catherine tried to shield me, but I stepped forward. Just enough. I didn't cry, didn't shake. I just said this. I was told my entire life that family comes first. That silence is survival, that good daughters don't make trouble. But I want to say this to every person watching, to every person who's ever been told to stay quiet because we don't air family business. This is what happens when you turn silence into a weapon. You lose your ability to control the story. I held up the folder. This isn't about revenge, it's about visibility, because no daughter should have to be bloodied to be believed. Then I turned and walked away. But the story didn't end there. That night, Emily issued an apology. Cold, scripted, posted at midnight. Comments turned off. My father's charity dissolved within 48 hours. My mother stopped calling. They didn't even try to frame it anymore. They just disappeared. But the world didn't forget. I started receiving messages from women, from sons, from ex-employees, from strangers who said thank you. I thought I was alone. A foundation reached out. They wanted me to consult, to speak, to help build something better from this brokenness. And I said yes, but first I had one more thing to do. Weeks later, I returned to the ballroom. Not for revenge, for reclamation. It was empty, being prepared for another event. But I didn't need the crowd. I walked to the spot where he'd hit me, where they'd laughed, where I'd been erased, and I pulled something from my purse. A thin silver chain necklace, tarnished, bent slightly. My mother had ripped it off my neck during a fight when I was 17. You want to wear jewelry like a grown woman, she'd snapped. Start acting like one. I'd kept it all these years, not out of sentiment, out of memory. I fastened it around my neck, looked at my reflection in the wall of mirrors, and I didn't see a victim. I saw the one they couldn't break. I whispered, "This time I choose how the story ends." Then I turned and left. This wasn't just closure. This was reclamation. I didn't go viral because I screamed. I went viral because I stopped whispering, because I stopped waiting for someone to say I mattered, because I stopped being the footnote to their legacy, because I stood in the wreckage of everything they built on top of me and told the truth. People kept asking, how did you stay so calm, as if silence always means weakness, as if they didn't understand that some of us are trained from birth to tiptoe around people who love us with knives behind their backs, as if they didn't know that staying quiet is a form of survival until it isn't. The world saw one video, but I lived a whole lifetime of it, of being erased, of being rewritten, of being told that abuse was just tough love and that exclusion was my own fault, but not anymore. Now when I look in the mirror, I don't see someone trying to earn a seat at their table. I see someone who built her own and bolted the door shut. The civil suit proceeded, slowly, legally, not for vengeance, but for justice, Emily. She tried to pivot, tried to spin her way back into sympathy, but the internet never forgets cruelty and heels. My father facing fraud charges, watching his empire shrink under subpoenas. My mother. She finally stopped calling, but the quiet wasn't sad. It was peaceful, the kind of peace that only comes when the volume of your own voice finally drowns out the ones that always tried to edit you. And I kept going, not because I wanted to punish, but because I owed it to the next girl who gets dragged across marble floors and called dramatic for standing up, to the next Arabella who thinks survival means silence. No. We write our names now. We write them in ink and blood and contracts and headlines, and we do not ask for permission. If you've ever been erased by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever been told to let it go when what they really meant was, "Don't make us look bad." If you've ever had to fight for your own version of the truth, drop your story in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if you stayed silent for too long, let this be your sign. Speak now. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. We rewrite the ending from here together.